And I just want to mention that tonight, for the first time, we had refreshments, and we're going to do this every month. Start a half hour early with refreshments to give people a chance to network and mingle. And I like that because it's so much more rewarding to come in person. What would you like? Oh, let folks, okay. It's hard to do it all. I know. Yeah, we're good. So I'm just going to go over a brief technical overview for everybody. So please, in the Zoom, please stay muted unless you're speaking. Sign on with your phone or your computer, but not both. The democratic rules of order, I would like someone to post that on the chat, please. That's how we run our meetings. It's just a little book compared to Robert's Rules of Order. It's so much simpler. And for people who are calling in with a phone, you'll need to unmute yourself with a *6, and then just speak up and let us know when you wish to speak when we're asking for people for questions. Encourage, everybody should raise their hand with the on Zoom with the little icon, because that way the people who raised their hands first will show up easily for me to be able to call on you. Questions you submit on chat may not be answered because unless someone wishes to take on the task of reading the chat, I can't do that as well as run the meeting. So if you want to have a question, raise your hand and speak up like everybody else has to do here in the Land Trust room. Now, the use of microphones in the Land Trust building are very important. We only have 2, and so when you want to speak to the meeting, even though the people in the room can hear you, the people in Zoom cannot hear you unless you're speaking like I am directly into the mic. So I'm going to be controlling that pretty carefully. So this is what you need to be speaking into. Okay, so board members present this evening. We have myself, and Ben Carr is with us, and I would like the other board members to please speak up and let us all know that you're here, okay?
Jessica.
Hi, my name is Jessica Anakar. I'm a board member. Thanks for being here this evening.
Thanks, Jessica.
Hi, my name is Jamila Stigall. I'm taking notes tonight. Good to see everyone. Thanks for your presence.
And I guess that's it for this evening for our board members, okay? So I'm going to just remind folks that the council prides itself on striving to conduct its business in a professional, respectful, and courteous manner. Common courtesy and respect for fellow islanders and guests are expected. Rudeness, personal criticism, and ridicule, including the chat contributions in online meetings, are not acceptable, nor will they be tolerated. So next we have the land acknowledgement. Oh, you got it. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
That was warmed up.
All right, so I'm going to read the land acknowledgement. Let me just take a moment. All right, please join me in acknowledging the Coast Salish people. The land we occupy today is their ancestral land. For thousands of years they lived on it, stewarded its resources with care and wisdom. Today, with gratitude, we acknowledge them and their elders, past, present, and emerging, and recognize that this land is a vital part of their cultural sovereignty.
Thank you very much, Ben. Okay. So now it's time to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Those of you who are on our mailing list got a link to the meeting minutes so that you could take a look at them. So I would like to ask at this time if there are any corrections to be made to the January 18th meeting minutes. Hearing none, I will mark those as approved, and we'll move on. Next, we have the introduction of guests, which is anyone from King County or off island. So online, we have Hadley Rodero, I believe, is with us from Washington State Ferries.
Good evening. Nice to see you all. Hadley Rodero with Washington State Ferries.
Wonderful. Thank you. Councilwoman Teresa Mosqueda is with us. Teresa, would you like to say hello?
Good evening, everyone. I look forward to chatting more next month, and I'll definitely see you in April for the comprehensive plan discussion as well.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. We have a number of folks here from the Sheriff's Department. We have Captain Chris Leba online. Want to say hello, please?
Yes, I'm actually back to Beery Sergeant, but I'm Chris Leba.
Okay, sorry, I got that wrong. You guys move around pretty fast. It's hard for me to keep up sometimes. We also have Captain Eric Muller here with us. We have 5 folks. Why don't you guys just come on up and introduce yourselves? That would be just really wonderful. Speak really close into the mic.
Sure, I'm Captain Eric Muller with the King County Sheriff's Office. I'm just recently been moved over to the precinct 4 out of Ferry, falls into the jurisdiction of Vashon Island, Captain. So Mike Roscoe, I'm one of the patrol sergeants and I oversee and supervise all of that.
Diane, I don't think that microphone works. We can't hear them.
So I'm Deputy Oak. I work patrol here in Vashon. Been patrolling here since September.
Oh, man. Can you put that rice back in the fridge? And do you need to make fresh pasta?
Jamila, you are not muted.
Sorry about that.
I hope your pasta's good.
All right, can you folks hear me on Zoom? Yes, thank you so much. I'm sorry, Zoom quit unexpectedly on our end, and that's never happened before. There. Oh, where were we? Community happenings and island celebrations. February is Black History Month. On February 20th at 2:30 p.m., there will be a movie at the Senior Center on Black History activators. And so If you'd like to see that, that would be a wonderful thing to do. Also, another wonderful thing is that Vashon Household has opened its affordable housing wait list. This wait list has been closed for 3 years, so this is very great news for the community. Okay, now it's for the Sheriff's Department. Chris, you're on. If you'd like to give us an update, please.
Yes. Okay. So what we're going to go through tonight is some crime statistics for 2023, as well as some officer polling that we did at a request of various persons. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through the presentation, and then we will have time at the end for questions. So let me go ahead and share screen. Diane, you might need to turn screen sharing back on. There we go. Okay. I will turn that on now. Can you see the presentation? Okay. So a couple different things we're going to go through. We'll go through the quarterly crime classifications for 2023 to show you various crime trends throughout the year. Then I'll do a comparison of 2022 to 2023 to show you how crime has changed over the last year relative to the year before. We're going to talk about on-view police activity over the past couple of years and explain the current trend, which just as a preview, it is going up. So we are actually able to dedicate more time to proactive police work out on the island. And the last section is kind of unique. We actually did a polling of the deputies that work out there most often for you on some various topics. So you're going to get some input directly from the deputies that work out there on some various things that we thought might be relevant to you. So first thing, Vashon crime by the numbers. So crimes against persons in last year, let me move this out of the way. These are the basic numbers for the year by quarter. As you can see, predictably in the third quarter, which is your summer months, everything kind of goes up a little bit. But these are the different numbers per category for the year. No homicide investigations, no human trafficking offenses, very little of the major crime categories. The one that we'll touch on is the biggest one, which is your simple assaults. And that'll come up again when we do the 2022-23 comparison. But there were 26 of those very simple assaults throughout the year. The crimes against property, these are your lower level offenses, such as your burglaries, vandalisms, and simple thefts. Throughout 2023, we had, again, you see in the summertime, things kind of went up a little bit in certain categories. Your basic larcenies, which these are going to be mostly your shoplifts on Vashon, stayed fairly consistent throughout the year. But overall, these numbers are your numbers for 2023. And crimes against society, again, these are more of the low-level broken windows sort of crimes, but very, very low out on the island. Throughout 2023, we had 3 weapons law violations. Other crimes against societies tend to be miscellaneous crimes like extortion, but very one-off. So again, throughout the whole year, only 5 of these. So again, very low for the island. Now, what does this actually mean? We can compare it to 2022 and see where things are going. So here's your percent change. Let me get this out of the way. Here's your percent change between 2022 and 2023. See if I can move this real quick. There we go. Okay, so overall, crime is down 11% comprehensively from last year. Aggravated assault offenses went pretty much down to 38%. Again, with statistics, you have to remember that statistics can look very overblown if you have a small sample set. So with the weapons law violations and the other crimes against societies, obviously those look like they were a massive increase. But going from 1 to 3 is not necessarily a massive increase. It's just proportionally so. Overall, we had a decrease in violations of orders, sex offenses, auto thefts were way down last year. I would attribute that maybe to some of the traffic enforcement that's being done, but we'll talk about that in a bit. The 2 categories that were up the most are going to be your simple assaults and your commercial burglaries. Our deputies that work out there, I actually talked to them about these 2 categories, and for what it's worth on those particular categories, it sounds like there's 1 or 2 folks that are kind of well known that are committing the vast majority of these particular crimes, especially with the commercial burglary. So our detectives are aware of that. Just so you know that it's not we're not worried about necessarily a ring out there. The people are kind of known to the police. So that's hopefully some comfort for those numbers being up slightly. So daily calls for service and proactive activity. I know this is somewhat hard to read. Daily calls for service tend to be fairly consistent throughout the years. As you can see, this particular map goes from 2019 all the way through to the first couple of weeks of 2024. And it pretty much follows the same trend year by year. We expect roughly between 1,500 to 2,500 calls a year. As you can see, last year was about 1,600 out there on the island. On-view activity. So we get a lot of questions from islanders about what is the sheriff's office doing with their free time. As you can see, this map goes all the way back to 2019, and it shows the monthly on-view activity. These are going to be anything from traffic stops to business checks to area checks to suspicious stops. And 2019, obviously, on this map was a much higher year than others. And then we see a plummet because obviously we had COVID happen. So over the past couple of years, those numbers dipped down. And in 2022, we really saw them drop for various factors, such as we had some staffing issues in Precinct 4 that were causing a lot of overtime. We had a lot of new deputies that were coming through because we had a lot of turnover in the ranks. But there are some good news with this particular map. As you can see, which it's going to be this line right here, this light blue one. We have started to finally see an increase. And this can be, I think, attributed mostly to the fact that we have some deputies finally starting to get their feet on the ground out there and get rooted in the Vashon community and kind of know where the players are, where the problems are, and they're actually able to, with more confidence and more experience, handle those problems. So as you can see, this was an uptrend throughout the year to the point where it was actually higher in December than the last 4 years. So definitely those numbers are going up for what it's worth. We actually ended up with 1,120 of these on views last year, which, let's see if I can bring it in. As you can see down here at the bottom, these are the numbers over the last 5 years. Obviously, we have some work to do to get back to 2019, but we are on an upward trend. So I hope that is a little bit of solace for people that are worried about our ability to use our discretionary time more proactively. So the next part of this presentation is the deputy perceptions of Vashon activity. So we actually, in all of our unincorporated deputies, we polled our deputies based on how much time they work out on the island during their whole week on some various questions, and we'll go through those now. So of your deputies, we actually asked the deputies what they believe, based on what calls they're going to, what they're seeing in the community, the biggest public safety issues are on Vashon throughout 2023. And this is the breakdown of that. By and large, deputies rated crimes against persons and drug activity as your number 1 and 2 most prevalent crimes in their perception, with traffic lagging down here at the bottom at number 3. As far as this was kind of a unique stat, actually, as far as what is the smallest public safety issue out there, simple thefts and, ironically enough, drug activity. So drug activity between our deputies was obviously kind of divided, but theft was considered one of the smallest priorities of things that's affecting the community the most out there from their perspective. From the perspective of how much time our deputies have to conduct proactive policing, as you can see, this is our category of very high versus very low. Most of our deputies believe we have ample time out there to do proactive policing. As far as being able to communicate with all of you that actually live in the community, do we have a solid manner of communicating priorities for public safety between our officers and the Vashon community? I hope you can give yourselves kind of a pat on the back, because it sounds like our deputies are very confident that the community has the ability to network with our deputies out there and communicate problems that you're seeing in an effective manner. So basic summary, again, crime overall down 11% from 2022, while on-view activity is up 25% from 2022. Deputies do actually believe that the community is reporting crimes that are happening, which is good, because often if crime is not reported, it doesn't get captured in our statistics, which means we don't know where to direct deputies to solve the problems, right? So it's good to hear that. And deputies perceive the crimes against persons and drug activity as the biggest priority to public safety on the island. So I wanted to keep that brief so we can now do some Q&A with the audience. My contact information is on this, and I've provided this presentation to Diane. If you have low-level things that you don't want to call 911 for, there's a link to the online reporting for the King County Sheriff's Office. And if you have media inquiries, things that are more ongoing, policy related with the Sheriff's Office and the county, we ask that you direct it to our media response unit at kcsomro@kingcounty.gov. So I will go ahead and stop screen sharing, and myself and the other officers in command in the room can answer some questions.
That was really wonderful. Thank you so very much. And I will take a look here and see. I'll start with Ted Staley, who has her hand up. Ted, could you unmute yourself and ask your question, please? Okay. So Peg, if you're not have a question, you can just put your hand down and we'll ask someone here in the room.
I cannot hear that person speaking. Sorry.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is Joanne. Thank you for that report. You mentioned sexual crimes or occurrences. I'm not sure what that means. I'd like that defined. Is that allegations of rape or whatever? And then what are the numbers? Thanks.
Sure. So sexual crimes are from simple like inappropriate touching to rapes to sexual related, like you're on the right track. That category. The numbers for 2023 is what you were asking. Total 3 throughout the whole year.
Any alleged rapes of those 3?
And the question was, the follow-up was, are there any alleged rapes among those?
I believe there was at least one, without, obviously we can't give out all the details, but Nothing, I believe it was probably a known suspect in that particular case. So nothing like a unknown situation.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up on the Zoom. Is there anyone else here? Okay.
Hello, can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Jenny Bell. I actually worked for the police in Australia for a little bit. And one of the things that I've always wondered is when you pull people over on the side of the road, compared to what we do in Australia, there's a lot of hoo-ha here, like big flashing sirens. It's a lot quieter in Australia, and I always wondered why. What are the reasons behind that? Like being very loud and very visible.
Hi, everybody. For the online folks, maybe if you heard me earlier or not, Major Kobe Hamill. I'm the precinct commander here in the sheriff's office for Precinct 4. To answer your question, it's a safety thing. We have lots of lights on our cars purely as a safety mechanism to warn other drivers. It's routine across the country. You see police officers struck weekly. We get stories of police officers that are struck by inattentive motorists, intoxicated motorists, and the goal behind the emergency lights is purely a safety stance. Yeah. So yeah, for the officers. I mean, it's, of course you want the violator to know they're being pulled over, but 99% of the time it's a safety piece for us, for let other motorists know we have a law in this state, and when you see emergency lights and sign, you're either required to slow down and pass at a lower than posted speed limit, or you're required to move over on a multi-lane road to provide at least one lane's distance between the emergency vehicle that stopped and the traveling portion of the roadway. I hope that answers your question. All right.
I've also always wondered about the double yellow lines. We have a lot of double yellow lines right down the center of our highway. And to me, I did do the test. I have a US license, but I believe you can't cross over them. And yet there's tons of places that you can't get out of unless you cross over those lines. So I'm saying, hopefully you don't pick that up as something you nab us all on because a lot of people do it.
Generally, when you're pulling out of a driveway, you can cross over a double yellow line when you're making a turn, whether to your left, right? When you're pulling out of your driveway and say out onto the highway here and it's a double yellow line, you can cross over that double yellow line to make your turn. Double yellow lines generally mean no passing zone, right? So if you have, say you're traveling down the road and the vehicle is going slower and you want to go faster and you pass that vehicle, then you've committed an infraction per the RCW, which is passing. You're not allowed to pass in the double yellow line. Now, some instances where like there's maybe a farm tractor or vehicle that may be traveling down the roadway at 5 miles an hour and hugging the road, but partially blocking it, you're not going to get pulled over by one of our officers if you go around that safely, right? It's when you're both traveling at speed and you're trying to go faster and you're passing somebody when you shouldn't be passing them. That makes sense to you. All right.
For the data you talked about, the polling of the deputies who work here, I think you had referenced sort of drug offenses as being the second most common.
I'm sorry, I'm having a real hard time hearing you.
All right, we're swapping microphone. Can you hear me better now?
Yep, that's
all right. This is the good one. I think you had mentioned that when polling deputies on the island, that drug offenses were the sort of one of the top 2 most common interactions with the public. Correct me if I'm wrong, but earlier in your presentation, didn't drug, like call-ins for drug offenses, wasn't that at virtually 0 call-ins? And so if we're getting virtually 0 call-ins from the community, but it's the sort of one of the most common contacts for the law enforcement, can you speak to why there's that sort of disparity there?
So some of it is that we're going to contact people that are under the influence of narcotics that are maybe doing other things, trespassing, creating maybe like a verbal disturbance, stuff like that. That in that moment, in the state of Washington, it's not illegal to be high. It's illegal to possess narcotics to some extent, but I don't want to call it confirmation bias, but when we're dealing with people that are going through mental health or going through narcotics use quite a bit, it can kind of create the perception of this is what we're seeing. Now, the reality is what the calls for service are you guys calling us. So people calling solely on this person is using narcotics has gone down. And I think a lot of that probably is because of legal changes in Olympia and, you know, stuff like that. But as far as the deputies seeing it versus it being called in, again, the deputies are often seeing it as a secondary thing when they're going to other calls. So that's probably that's probably the best explanation I think we have for that.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me on this mic?
Barely. I think it's that other mic that works good.
I was trying to fix it, but obviously I couldn't. Okay. All right, so Debbie Jackson has a question. Debbie.
Hi, thank you. I just wondered if you've had the opportunity to work with any of the local nonprofits or social service organizations like Dove does a lot of abuse or partner issues. I don't know their everything they do, or there's a Vashon Youth and Family Services and Social Service Network. There's quite a few just local organizations that deal with some of these, or VARSA dealing with drug use prevention. And I wondered if you'd had the opportunity to deal with any of those or discuss issues with them.
Yes. So a couple of the organizations out there do work with us, some to varying degrees. And we do get lower level operational tips and concerns brought to our attention through them that are not necessarily 911 call worthy, but they are known to our deputies out there. We actually have a new operations sergeant who is in the back of the room, Mike Glasgow. He'll be taking over for Sergeant Kirsten Whitaker, and those people, he'll probably be the one with Captain Mueller to work with those organizations on those more long-term issues. So.
Yep. And to add on to the answer, we actually did work with Dove today. Usually when we have to call in a resource, it's normally a situation where we have something where it doesn't necessarily meet a crime or a certain criteria, but we can't just leave the scene without, providing the certain type of assistance. So, we call on those resources to provide that help. Like today, not only do we have to call Dove, but we called a handful of different hotlines to try and help out a family.
All right, well, thank you very much. That was very, very informative. Thank you all very much for showing up in force tonight. It was great to have you here and meet you. It's great. So I hope that...
Diane, can I just take one more minute?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, last thing. This was brought to our attention, and it was something you guys wanted answered. It actually came to our media unit, and Eric White down there asked me to briefly address it. I guess there were some concerns about human trafficking on Vashon Island and whether that was a prevalent thing that was going on. Briefly, I will give you a case that there was actually a case that's the U.S. District Attorney, so the federal government, just closed in April of 2023 of a particular human trafficking operation that had been going on the island. From 2017 to 2022. The suspect in that was arrested, was arraigned, and the federal government has actually closed out the case. So yes, this was a thing that did happen, but I wanted to say that this is not something that is a prevalent thing. I actually had our crime analysis people scour our books, and other than this federal case, we really couldn't find anything that was going on. So for the people that did bring that up and wanted that addressed tonight, Yeah, the case was US versus Ruiz Hernandez, I think it was, but overall, we are not seeing a problem with that as a prevalent thing. So I just wanted to close with that.
Okay, thank you so very much. Okay, well, that was really great. And now we're going to move on to Washington State Ferries. Hadley Rodero, I have made you co-host so you can share your screen.
Thank you, Diane. And I'm also joined by John Vizina, who joined a little bit after we did introductions, who's the director of the department I work in, Planning, Customer, and Government Relations. So he's going to actually start off our presentation, and then I will talk about the Fauntleroy project after he goes. So can everybody see the screen in this presentation?
Yes.
Thanks, Diane. Thanks, Hadley. And thanks for allowing Hadley and I to spend a few minutes with you. We do have a quick presentation, but we want to leave the majority of the time for your questions. So as most of you probably know, during COVID, when ridership really fell, we had a COVID response plan. And coming out of it, both in 2022 and 2023, we released COVID service restoration plans. And we did our best when those were written based on estimates for crewing and vessel availability, and obviously we missed the mark. Crewing especially is not an exact science. It's something that, you know, people are still retiring and moving, quitting for other reasons. So just want to give you a quick overview. So vessel availability, there's two constraints. You're next on the list, as you probably know, for getting your service restored, but there are two constraints. Vessel availability is the first. In 2015, we had 24 vessels, and today we have 21. And one of those 21 will be out for its midlife preservation, being converted to hybrid. But whether or not that was done, those vessels, the Jumbo Mark II, are three biggest. They need their midlife preservation work. Part of the reason that we had to retire boats early and we were down to 21 is in the past, we just kept them in service because we needed them. And there was pressure to keep everything going, and then they didn't last their full 60-year lifespan. So we are doing that planned work on those three big boats. Those three boats of our 21 burn 26% of our diesel fuel. We spend $150 million a year on diesel fuel. They burn 26% of that, so they put out 26% of our greenhouse gas emissions. So as they start coming back after a year each, that will significantly reduce our fuel and our greenhouse gas, but it means for the next 3 years, we're down to 20 vessels. The fleet is between 5 and 64 years old. After I-695 passed in 1999 and the legislature adopted most of it the following year, no vessels were built between 2000 and 2010. And then 7 were built between 2010 and 2018. And now we're going to have another 10-year gap. You know, the legislature, with falling transportation revenues, the legislature faces real constraints in transportation funding across the state. So building 7 boats over 28 years, it's tough to have the vessel availability we need. The legislature changed the law last year, so we'll be able to build out of state. And we can do multiple shipyards. So we're actually hoping at the end of the summer, when we sign contracts for new vessels, that we will be able to build more than one, but it will take until early 2028 to get 1, 2, or 3, however many we build. And then crewing availability, we just had folks from BC Ferries down, their leadership. They're saying the same thing that we are, even though they can hire internationally and we can't. They are canceling sailing still because of crewing, as is the Alaska Marine Highway System, Massachusetts Steamboat Authority, Staten Island Ferry. There is a global shortage of mariners. A lot of folks were mariners who are now retiring. And until the last 2 years, we weren't given the funding to move unlicensed crew members to licensed. We now have that. I think in the next 12 to 18 months, crewing is going to become much less of an issue. But we have Coast Guard requirements. It takes time for people to get the sea days they need, and then the certification for Puget Sound pilotages and other things in order to ease this crewing constraint. You know, just directly to all of you, as I said, you are next for service restoration. Nobody at WSF doesn't understand both how bad the 2-boat schedule is, nor how much you deserve and need that 3rd boat back. So as soon as we have any time that we have the crewing and the vessel availability to put a third boat on, we will add a third unscheduled boat to the route. The goal of that will be to keep the 2-boat schedule on schedule. But then, just clearing as many people and vehicles out as we can. And then as we look at the prioritization, third boat, when we know we're going to have a third boat and the crewing long term, then we'll try restoration. We won't do that until we know we can. But even then, it may be for a season. If we can say we're going to have 3 boats for the summer, and we have the crewing in the boat to do that, we will do so. But it may mean at the end of the summer, when boats have to be worked on, that's not reliably restored. But we're all focused on getting you that third boat reliably as much as we can. You'll see that Bremerton and then Port Townsend Coopville are after you, and then the Anacortes Sydney boat we don't think will go to 2030. So, again, and I want to turn it over to Hadley to talk about the next project, but I don't live on Vashon, but I talk to a lot of you. I certainly talk to your legislators, and I know how tough things are now. And there is no laziness, there's no lack of focus. We both will restore 3-boat service when we can. And when we have the capacity to rewrite the 2-boat schedule, we'll also do that. I know that is cold comfort as you deal with that current schedule. I'm happy to answer questions about that at the end if people have specific questions. Hadley?
Thanks, John. Okay, I'm going to pivot to the next topic, which is the replacement of the Fauntleroy terminal, and then both John and I will answer questions on any topic that you'd like, these 2 topics at the end. So as many of you know, we were in the middle of a project to replace the Fauntleroy terminal. We're early in the design process. The goals of the process are to replace the 70-year-old structure that does not meet seismic standards nor earthquake preparedness standards and is not ready for rising sea levels. It's also the lowest dock in our system. So when tides are high, king tides, and we have logs bumping up underneath the dock and causing damage, it also has, as you all know, many operational challenges, and it's 80 cars when the vessels that serve the route hold 124 cars, which makes it challenging to fill the boat while cars are going through the toll booth buying their tickets. We're in a process called the Planning and Environmental Linkages process right now, which is a federally led process. FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, is our co-lead that will lead into the NEPA-SEPA environmental review, the more traditional EIS process that many of you might be familiar with. We're in the middle of the Pell study where we're screening the alternatives with the goal of selecting a single preferred alternative by 2025. We're also working really closely with 3 advisory groups, a community advisory group that many members of the Vashon community are a part of, including Justin Hirsch, who's the chair of the the Vashon Advisory Committee, Ferry Advisory Committee. And we have a technical advisory group with many of our agency partners and staff from some of the agencies that we work closely with, including transit agencies, and then an executive advisory group where all of your legislators, Councilmember Mosqueda, and others are all part of that group and working closely with advising us at a policy level. So I'm just going to quickly run through the range of alternatives so you can see the concepts we're thinking of and that we'll be asking for feedback on. They're all using the existing dock location, and they're all sort of a variation on various shapes and sizes of the dock, larger, smaller, longer, skinnier. The idea is which one works operationally while also meeting the other needs of replacing the dock and bringing it up to current standards. That dark shaded area at the end in some of the photos, which you'll see more clearly in the next renderings, is eelgrass, and that's a crucial environmental component of the project. That right now there's quite a bit of eelgrass there, and it's the mouth of Fauntleroy Creek, which is an environmentally sensitive area, and that little horseshoe shape at the end of the dock is where the eelgrass has been scoured out by the propeller of the ferry. When it comes in, it sort of scours the bottom of the seafloor, and no eelgrass is growing there, which is crucial habitat for salmon and other species. So that's something we're kind of looking at, and it's part of the design concept. So I'm going to run through pretty quickly these alternatives, just so you can see the variety in what we're looking at. And we can go back during questions if you have questions about any of them. So we're starting with a dock that's a little bit smaller in capacity than what we have today, although it's got a bigger footprint because it needs to hold, be up to today's design standards for lane widths, including a motorcycle lane, a bicycle lane, a pedestrian walkway. And then you'll see that our alternatives have the dock getting a little bit longer. This alternative holds 124 cars, so the number of cars that a ferry holds. This one holds 155 cars, a little bit more than one vessel's worth with an extra holding lane. 155 cars with different configuration of holding lanes. And then this one's 124 cars, again, a little bit narrower in the near shore area and wider out over the deeper water. And then this alternative is the largest alternative, holds 186 cars, so a boatload and a half. It's 112 feet over deeper water and 85 feet wide near the shore. It has a fairly long pedestrian walkway, 1,105 feet. That's the largest alternative that we're looking at. Just for another perspective, this is the view from across the street, what it looks like today from that bluff, Captain's Park it's called, across the street from the terminal. And I'll just run through that same range of alternatives. So that's alternative A, the smaller size. These alternatives A1 and 2 are variations on a little bit longer dock that would move the ferry berthing structures offshore and hold about the same capacity as the dock holds today. A little longer again, these are the 124 and 155 car alternatives in various configurations, and then alternative C, which is the 186 car alternative. An important thing to note is none of them widen extensively to the north where Cove Park is. That's a feature that we've been told is very important to the community. And we also need to be mindful of King County Wastewater Treatment Division's facility where the white van is there in the foreground. They need 24/7 access to that wastewater treatment facility. So all of the alternatives avoid widening too far in the nearshore area. Another really important thing that we've heard from the community, and that's a crucial part of the project, is intersection control, and something that we hear often from Vashon Islanders. When we don't have an officer there to control the intersection, it's extremely challenging. And as over the years, there's been times when we haven't been able to get off-duty police officers to man the intersection and or had funding for that. So we've been sort of relying on that rather than a different way of managing traffic control. So we're looking at intersection control. This shows you the current configuration, 2 lanes that can turn left, 1 lane to the right, just how it looks today. And what we're proposing is to add a signal. So you'd have the right lane would be able to go southbound, the left lane would go northbound. There'd be a bike turning lane and signals in all directions that would have transit priority and have pedestrian crossing. And what we're proposing is to take this project and move it out of the larger terminal project and actually accelerate it and move toward installing a signal sooner, so that we have the new signal in place now, because we need it now, especially on 2-boat service, but also have it in place during construction of the new terminal. So that's just something I wanted to flag. That's part of the bigger project, but something that we hear often from the Vashon community is getting better traffic control at the intersection. We're still really early in the process in terms of how the signal would operate and all the different complexities and how you would time that signal and give priority to the different modes, and how we'll move that project forward in concert with SDOT, Seattle Department of Transportation, because this is actually a city street. We need to work closely with them to design and plan for a new signal. So before I move on, I just wanted to flag a few other things that we've been doing with the community in partnership with the Vashon Ferry Advisory Committee, who we meet with every the 3rd Wednesday of every other month, and those meetings are open to the public. So we are there to answer questions if they come up in between some of your meetings. We're happy to answer them. We provide service updates and answer questions and concerns brought to us by FAC members, many of whom are on the meeting tonight. And then we also have been working in collaboration with Vashon Island Fire and Rescue We worked with the Coast Guard to change crewing requirements for some of the early morning vessels, so to make sure that we have the ability to do medical transports and emergency vehicle transports off island at all hours of the day, even if we are short the full crewing needed to run service for the public. So the Coast Guard changed one of their requirements so that we're always able to carry medical and emergency vehicles off the island. And then we also worked with Vashon School District recently to adjust our early morning sailing times and our policies for getting students on the hazmat trip early in the morning out of Vashon so they could get to school on time. And we've been kind of monitoring that in partnership with the school district to allow our off-island commuter students to get to school on time as much as possible on days when we're not carrying hazmat, and we can get them on that sailing that's an unpublished sailing, leaving Fauntleroy just a little bit early than the 7:40, getting them to school on time. So those are just some examples of some of the smaller things that might seem minor but have a big impact that we're doing in partnership with the community. And we'd love to hear any other ideas you have during the Q&A. And with that, I think, Diane, we made it in under your time limit, so we have plenty of time.
You did.
For
I was watching.
yeah.
Okay, if you could stop sharing your screen, that would be fabulous, and so that we can see the people's hands up. There we go. Perfect. Okay, and there. All right. Okay. Any questions here in the in-person audience?
Hi there, I'm Seisha Kearns. Thank you for the information. It's so great to get the updates. I had no idea there's a global shortage of mariners. That was so interesting to hear, and I'm just curious, the mariners, other ferry workers, where is the workforce normally trained, and is that a capacity that Washington State needs to develop? And can we do it on Vashon?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there was an article a couple of months ago in the Vancouver Sun because they were responding to boats being tied up in British Columbia, and they estimated that globally there's a shortage of 21,000 mariners. A lot of that seems to be that, traditionally mariners were straight white men. We know from talking to folks in our crews that they would talk to their sons or their nephews or their male neighbors, but they didn't talk to women, BIPOC people, LGBT folks. And for us and for other ferry systems, there was no incentive or training to move people from unlicensed Dept to licensed. That's a process that takes months of getting sea days. And when we talked to people, they were like, I can't work full time and have a family and take all the training with the Coast Guard and everything I need. So to your second part of your question, 2 years ago, the legislature started funding us. So we actually take 12 people, able-bodied sailors. So you start as an ordinary sailor with basic fire training, life safety, rescue. And they're the people you usually see if you're in a vehicle. And then you go from ordinary sailor when you get enough sea days to able-bodied sailor. To go up the next level, you need to be licensed. And so now we take 12 of those able-bodied sailors who before would have had to do it on their own, and we put them in an 8-week class where they learn everything they need to learn. They still have to have Puget Sound pilotage, and that's a major thing for us. People say to me all the time, why don't you hire Coast Guard people? Why don't you hire Navy people? It's very rare to find people with Puget Sound pilotage. If you bring a cruise ship into Puget Sound, you hire a pilot who makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Military boats station about 8 people around the boat to watch for landmarks and to make sure they don't hit anything. Obviously, neither of those will work for us. So our captains and mates have to have Puget Sound pilotage. That takes time. So there is a Seattle Maritime Academy. There's a simulator in Port Townsend. And then there are maritime places around the country. There's actually, it's great. Just in the last couple of years, there's now a Seattle Maritime High School. Because really to get folks involved, we need people to get excited. I've taken some young Black, Indigenous people of color, middle schoolers out on our boats to expose them to these jobs. These are good paying jobs with with retirement and healthcare and annual leave. But too often in the past, we haven't done outreach to the diverse communities we need in 2024 to rebuild. We're doing that now, but you know, it's going to take time. We'll get there, but it's going to take time.
Thank you very much. That's a great question and a very interesting answer. Any other questions for Washington State Ferries? Oh, yes, Justin, please.
Hey, thanks, John and Hadley, for coming to the meeting. Obviously, that's a lot of stuff I've heard before as chair of the FAC, but it's always good to shout it from the hilltop so people can hear it. I wanted to flag for you both quickly that we have a bit of a space conflict with our March Ferry Advisory Committee meeting because the space in the Heron Room where everyone's meeting there is not available on that day. So we're gonna have to coordinate something else and maybe might end up pushing that to and sort of off schedule April meeting. I don't know. But I think the big question, you know, in the service restoration really is now that we know that it's going to be a minimum of 4 more years, and let's be honest, quite likely longer than that, until we have full pre-COVID service restoration on the Triangle route. You know, we need to focus on getting that service planner role filled so that we can get that schedule. And I just want to hear really clearly from you guys, for the sake of the whole community here, what is it going to take to get that service planner role filled, and what is it going to take to rewrite that 2-boat schedule?
So I'll start because Hadley always corrects me and knows more than I do. You know, I'm going to push back a little bit, Justin. I don't think it will be more than 4 years, and I'm actually fairly hopeful it will be less. You know, we have, as I said, I think in the next 12 to 18 months, we'll have the crewing situation figured out. I'm fairly confident before then there will be times when we have crewing because you're next on the list and boats available temporarily. And you know, the vessel maintenance team, they've got these boats that are 5 to 64 years old, but they're working hard to have as many operating in the summer when it's busy as possible. So, you know, hopefully I won't be proven wrong. It's always dangerous when you guess, but I think you will see increased periods of 3-boat service, sometimes unscheduled, but having that 3rd boat there. We actually, Hadley, I think we have the service planner job just hit the street, right?
I believe it will, not tomorrow, then early next week. And this is the 2nd round of going out, trying to recruit a new service planner. We did post that position last year and at the end of last year, and didn't find any qualified applicants. So we're reposting the position, and we're really desperate to get that position filled because, as you say, Justin, it's a crucial role for us. Somebody who writes our sailing schedules is what this service planner position is. So it'll be posted again, and it'll be open for a couple weeks, and hopefully we'll get some good candidates.
And Justin, you all have done a great job. I know that the House budget comes out on Monday next week and the Senate budget on Wednesday. There have been conversations about adding a 2nd service planner. That has a long way to go in the legislative process, but you know, people specifically bring up how badly, you know, we need more than one, and largely because they understand how bad the 2-boat schedule is. So, you know, Hadley and I talk all the time with she supervises the planning department as my deputy, and you know, we are 100%. The second we have the capacity to do this work, we will do it.
Thank you so much for that feedback. I want to give WSF some credit and just say, you know, since the AV to Mate program has yielded its first graduates, and you know, the other workforce development programs that WSF has already put in place, you know, have really started to generate these qualified mariners. It seems to me that we have seen fewer sailings canceled for lack of crew. It's obviously not a completely solved problem, but we're definitely making progress there. I'm also encouraged to hear that the service planner is at least moving forward. I do hope that, you know, we find somebody. I know WSF typically is under as under a statutory mandate to do some public engagement when new schedules are written. Do we know, excuse me, so once we hire the service planner, we get this person up to speed, I mean, what kind of public engagement process would we be looking at for rewriting the two-vote schedule?
Hadley?
Well, the first priority of this service planner is to rewrite the San Juan Island sailing schedule, which has not been updated in over 10 years. And we're starting a process now with some existing staff. We actually brought a retiree back to help us for the next few months, part-time, to kick off that process to try to get that one underway. But as soon as we complete the public process to update the San Juan Island sailing schedule, then the next one would be the two-boat triangle route schedule. And Justin, I don't know specifically because we haven't begun the process, what the public process would look like, but it would be fairly similar to the process we did when we rewrote the three-boat schedule back in 2018, where we worked closely with all three communities, getting input on priorities and needs for that two-boat schedule. My sense is it could probably be a faster process because we're talking about a schedule that's not intended to be the permanent schedule, like the three-boat is in place for a long time, but we do need to take into account input from all three communities that use it, and balancing those needs can sometimes be tricky, as you know, especially on a two-boat schedule with less service than anybody would like.
So as I recall, from best as I can recall from the times before COVID, everything's a little fuzzy, but I think the three-boat service schedule rewrite was like a minimum of 6 months of public engagement.
It was
right?
about 18 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So realistically, I mean, by the time we get this person, they get down to the San Juans, and then they get to us, we're a couple of years away. Is that fair?
Well, again, as John said, I think there's a lot of variables, so I wouldn't say that. Hopefully we could have a second service planner. We're also looking at other resources to help us write schedules, like bringing back this retiree that we've brought back, other ways we can use our staff, because we want to get to it as much as you all do. And I think we have a process in place that worked well through the three-boat schedule rewrite. We also have a really good collaborative process underway for the Fauntleroy Ferry Terminal replacement project with that community advisory group. And we have you all on the ferry advisory committees to work closely with. So I'm fairly certain that once we have the resources on our side to begin working on schedules, that the community engagement won't have to take as long as it has before.
And Justin, Susie Murphy has a question in the chat, and I don't think people in the room can see the chat.
I'm sorry. We're going to have to move on. This has been really interesting. You sure?
Yep.
Okay, let's go ahead and ask it then.
Is there any data to show how frequently a third boat has been made available since COVID? We do have the data for the very short time that you were on the three-boat schedule before we had to pull that boat. Unfortunately, the way, and I know this is not acceptable in 2024, but it's the reality of our system, the way that we tracked the vessels, when the third boat is a ghost boat, when it's not on the schedule, it makes the whole system not able to track, because suddenly a boat is showing up and people are moving and it's not sure what's where. So we don't have reliable data about that. We know the days certainly that we added it, but we don't have the data on specifically how it helped the schedule.
Okay, now thank you very much. Thanks very much, everybody. That was a very interesting conversation, and now we're going to move on to the update from Islanders for Ferry Action.
Hi, thank you. Oh, okay, no worries. Thanks. And thanks, Justin, and thanks to Hadley and John for such a great update and for so much information. That was a fantastic amount of information, and I think a lot of good news to look forward to in some ways. By look forward, I mean forward. So hi, I'm Amy Dreyer. I am at the Chamber of Commerce, and Islanders for Ferry Action is the project that we launched last summer. Kind of growing out of community input and kind of the continued lack of success with the service restoration plan for a lot of different reasons. And What we really wanted to do was kind of focus on what we could change, right? Washington State Ferries needs to do what they do best, and that is, getting the service restoration plan, the new one, kind of up and running and working on the schedules and all that stuff. But what can we do as a community? So Islanders for Ferry Action, we had a few really great community volunteers step up. Rick Wallace, Beth Lindsay, Wendy Amon, Laura Cherry, Cheryl Lubert, and Aaron Keeper stepped up to host the community forum last fall. And out of that community forum, we had about like 300 folks at the community forum in person and online. And we did some basically little workshops of different constituency groups. And from those groups, we pulled out the solutions, right? What can we do aside from having more crew and more boats? What can we do to help solve this crisis and get Islanders moving again? And we put a report out, which is a great blueprint that we can use. And you'll see a lot of these things that the ferries are talking about. A lot of things that you're seeing in the media are things that came out of this community, right? So immediate attention to that signal at Fauntleroy, getting crewing back up, right? I'll talk a little bit about the water taxi tonight, but a lot of the solutions that you put forward made it through. They made it through to our legislators, they made it through to the media, and that is really critical to note. And our continued engagement is something that we're absolutely gonna need, because this forward progress is really something that we have to continue to support. So what you see up here is kind of today's sort of call to action right now. Our state representative Emily Alvarado has put forward 3.17 million into appropriations. That is a request to appropriations to expand water taxi service between Vashon and Seattle. So that is a request to appropriations. And if you're familiar with the legislative process, what happens now is that everybody starts fighting for money, right? Is the simplest way to put it. So we need, as Vashon residents, to get in touch with our state legislature and support Representative Alvarado's request for appropriation. So you can see up here, we have it for folks on Zoom. If you want to capture that information, it's also, if you go to the chamber website, you'll see Islanders for Ferry Action, and I have a couple handouts here as well. But we need you to get in touch with Representative Fay and let him know how critical expanding water taxi is. Now, we cannot tell you right now exactly what format that will take with the water taxi. That then goes to King County, and there's a whole process there. But good news to report that our council member Teresa Mosqueda is very vocal and active in supporting water taxi expansion and in supporting metro wraparound expansion, right? So transportation overall to and from the water taxi, because we know that's also a big problem. And so she has also put in from her office a letter to Representative Fay, and King County sort of stands the ready if they receive that appropriation. And that's great news that we want to support, but we also want to ask people to take action. The other thing I wanted to cover was sort of our 5 priorities for Islanders for Ferry Action and how we've been spending our time. We have done a lot of work to get media attention and to sort of understand, get the world to understand that we're in crisis here. And we feel that we've been pretty successful. Our work, there's been a lot of work around Puget Sound, up in the San Juan Islands. There are so many communities now that are active in talking about this. And I think that's really caught the attention of the media. And that has helped us catch our attention of our legislators. And that hopefully means that we can get more resources to Washington State Ferries to do what they do best. Get them. We spoke with Senator Elias during session last month, and he said that he did put in, our understanding is that he did put in a request to get another scheduler planner for Washington State Ferries, so we could hopefully start that community process for getting our 2-boat schedule revised. We know that that schedule does not work. It does not work for Vashon. With years before another boat comes, even if we are first in line for service restoration, first in line still means years from now, right? And it also means, you have to have the crew for that boat. And I think obviously they've got folks coming through the pipeline, but we know there are a couple factors that may stop us from getting our full 3-boat schedule back. So prioritizing schedule adjustment for the Triangle route is a #1 priority for Islanders for Ferry Action for our work. We're also asking that Washington State Ferries assign us, if we have 2 boats in the summer, Can we get an Olympic class boat down here? Right? We know what happens when people have to wait hours to get onto the island and hours to get off the island. That's not just visitorship. That's, Alex going over to pick up construction materials, right? That is Cisco trying to get on here to get food for our restaurants. So we really hope that we can get a larger boat here for the summer run, even if we're only on 2 boats. Water taxi service is a third priority, and we are thrilled that Representative Alvarado is bringing that leadership. The other thing we'd love to see is expedited ticketing, right? If we're talking about that signal at Fauntleroy, which is a fantastic change that's going to help efficiency, but can we, be more efficient in how we load the boats, right? Efficiency in loading and onload and offloading is a huge. It's almost like adding capacity to a boat, right? For the schedule. So if we can, over time work for expedited ticketing. We'd love to see that as a priority. And then designated money within Washington State Ferries for crew, for our runs, for ferry dependent communities, right? We're talking here about San Juan's and Vashon. That is our only road home. It is our only road off the island, our only road on the island. So, we appreciate being prioritized and the understanding that, we're on our own here and we can use that crew funding. So those are our top 5 priorities. We are also starting conversations with the healthcare district and with Vashon Fire and Rescue and Vashon Be Prepared about medical priority loading, and just making sure that everyone understands how that works, understanding who's qualified for it, how you use it. Obviously our healthcare on the island is hugely dependent on the ferries. So we want to be part of making sure that the folks who need medical priority loading know how to do it, right? And that program is really functioning as well as it possibly can be. And mentioning Vashon Be Prepared, we are very excited that they have sort of signed on with us and are acting as a fiscal agent so that we can raise a little bit more money so that we can sort of expand our capacity for advocating for the island. 5 years until more boats come, 2 years until more boats come, however long it is, we need to be advocating that whole time. And we need to be advocates for ourselves kind of in perpetuity going forward, right? We need to speak well for our community and speak with an organized voice and really be partners with the Washington State Ferries in how we advocate for our community. So that's kind of an overview of what we've been up to at the Chamber with the boats and with Islanders for Ferry Action. That certainly does not encapsulate all the work of the volunteer committee that has been leading this ship, I guess, around. But just a real quick overview. And if folks have any questions, I don't know. Okay, yeah, I'd love to have questions or.
Thanks for the information. I appreciate one word that you used, which was crisis. I begin to wonder with all this long distance planning. I was really impressed with all the work that's been done regarding the dock, but the boat situation seems unchanged. And if I heard the number right, it sounded like there were more than 1,000 cancellations last year. And the economic impact on the island, it can't be understated. I don't understand why the ferry system doesn't get a little bit more skin in the game by simply taking the expiration dates off the commute tickets. Too often on Facebook, somebody posts, I've got a ticket here, it's got 3 more rides on it, it's expired tomorrow. Well, when so many runs are canceled or rescheduled because somebody doesn't get off the island, isn't always their fault. So, and I don't think this is going to solve any monetary problems, but at least I'd have a better sense that the ferry system was doing something. Just take the dates off.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, part of why Islanders for Ferry Action emerged was hearing the frustration from the community and understanding that we needed to take that and put it into a positive, form of action. And I will absolutely also give a huge round of applause for Justin and Wendy, who are on here, and the Ferry Advisory Committee. And they are a fantastic interface with Washington State Ferries. And that is a really great channel to go through to talk with the ferries about this policy. The Ferry Advisory Committee is really a strong channel to get work done and talk about policy changes with Washington State Ferries through them, because they are a committee that is affiliated with the ferries. They have, you know, every single thing that we do, right? Tread lightly. Everything with the ferries, you know, we want one thing and that ripples out into a million different policy considerations and ripples that they have. But the FAC is the way, I think, to start working through things like that, because we do, right? We want to be heard. We want to stop admiring the problem. We want to start finding solutions. We want to feel like our government agency is with us in crisis. And I think we really do, in the last few months, have seen how hard they're working and how hard they are pivoting to figure out how they can be part of all of the solutions. So yeah, thank you. The expiration dates on tickets is in the community report. It is a 25-page community report with over 50 solutions, and that is one of them. So.
Hi, this is Jeff Schnells. I have more of a comment. It was before 1990, Vashon Island did not have a water taxi foot passenger ferry that was put to Vashon Island. I was very opposed to it because I didn't want the impact that it would have on just growth on Vashon Island. But anyway, that's nearly 35 years ago now. And it's been 40, 45 years. We haven't had proper road maintenance here on Vashon Island. And I see all this talk about expanding ferries and millions being spent on ferries. And as far as I can tell, our road maintenance budgets don't exist. I talked to John Taylor about 2 weeks ago, and he told me that the way the tax structures are working in King County, that we're not going to get any road maintenance. So, yeah, you know, do what you can with your ferries, but this island needs road maintenance. It's been in need of road maintenance for 50 years now.
Sure.
So just absolutely true, 100% true, and really want to call attention back to the fact, though, that this is a crisis for the people who currently live on the island. It's not about expanding ferry access. It is about delivering reliable service to folks who depend on the ferries every day to bring goods on, to take goods off, and to get visitors on the island.
I guess this is partly for Amy, but probably more for Hadley. I know Justin has mentioned this, but I want to sing this refrain again so it gets, because it's catchy and I hope it gets stuck in people's ears. How do people provide feedback on the ferry dock, the Fauntleroy ferry dock options? I guess it's a two-part. What's the timeline for providing feedback? And two, is there an email? Is there a phone number? How do people provide that feedback?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I didn't do my final slide, which was exactly that. I can share it with you, Diane, if you want to share the email link with everybody, but we do have a project specific email where we collect comments at any time and we'll respond to them. We've been collecting them since 2019 when we started the project. We are planning to host public meetings later this spring, likely late April, early May, where we'll be sort of more formally going out with public meetings and collecting comments, but we're taking comments at any time. Oh, thank you, Justin. Just put it in the chat for anyone online. The email address is the Fauntleroy Term Proj, Fauntleroy, TERMPROJ at wsdot.wa.gov.
Okay.
So submit your comments to that email and we'll stay tuned for public meetings in the next couple months.
So also on the Community Council website, there's a lot of information about ferries, and this information about who to contact for these terminals will be there as well. So just go to the v-mcc.org and you will look around and you'll find it there as well. Okay, very good. Thank you very much for all that team, for all that work. Next on our agenda is a discussion and vote on a motion to form an advisory committee on Puget Sound Energy. And so, Jenny, would you like to introduce the motion again, state it again, and we'll. So the motion was moved and seconded at the January meeting, and so now we're going to be discussing and voting on it at this meeting.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. My name is Jenny Bell. Would you like to just hear the motion, first of all? And there is a suggestion to make a minor shift with it. So would you like the motion with the minor shift? Okay. Okay, this is it. That V-MCC create an advisory committee to learn more about the PSE tree wire project. This is the added bit. The implications of the project for island property owners, comma, and this is the same as the beginning version, and make recommendations for any appropriate action that the V-MCC should take. I don't know if you can put that on your screen. It's my version of a whiteboard. Unless you could just show it on your camera. I could put it up to that camera. Like we could go like this. And then you could take a screenshot. Okay, is that enough time for everyone? Okay. So I'm not sure of the format. Unless you want me to do a spiel first.
The question was, what is the tree wire project?
Okay. I'm an affected landowner. I have a particular point of view. I don't believe it's been correctly named tree wire project. I believe the proper name should be project pole pushback onto private property. There's a lot of P's. Tree wire is, PSE is describing it as a very significant upgrade for us in terms of wire that it's heavier, it has a layer of insulation around it, and it resists tree falls better, which all sounds like a very good thing. But some of the gaps in the information, there's big holes that you can drive a truck through, actually. So this committee is going to go in deep and find out precisely what's going on. So what in effect is occurring, one of the key questions is, can the tree wire be put onto the existing poles as is, no change? And I've had discussions with different groups. When you're working with PSE, you have to understand that there's a whole bunch of different departments and sections. Everybody has their specialty. So at our last meeting, for example, we didn't have any representation from the decision makers. The actual designers and decision makers come from the planning department. We had representation from the real estate acquisition team, were the only ones present. There were 4 of them, and we had some PSC people on Zoom who are implementers, not decision makers. So we have to get through to the people actually making the calls and trying to understand why this pole pushback is occurring. So whether it's poles on our private property or wires on our private property, the real estate acquisition team is actively seeking easement rights over our private property. Now, Do I keep going, or there's probably more questions?
Thank you, Jenny. So obviously we brought this up at the last meeting, and PSE was here. And on one hand, this is partly an apology to you, because at the time I thought I was skeptical, and I've since then thought a lot about it, and I am in favor generally of this. I have a friendly amendment to the wording of the motion. And that's because, one is I think this is a really good issue of import to islanders that we should look into, and recommendations should be made. But also I know that in terms of land use issues, there are a number of issues that are coming up that some of the board members, myself, am dealing with separately. My request would be a friendly amendment to create a land use committee with guidance that this be the first point of order that they take, but generally a land use committee to look into issues of concern to islanders and make appropriate recommendations, borrowing most of your language there. But I just wanted to say, like, I think there is enough. I think there's enough concern among islanders that it would be of great interest to them to look into it. But I also know that this is the type of area where once we've looked into this thing, there will be other issues of related to land use and whatnot that we need a standing committee to do. So I'm saying I'm doing a yes and here. Like, yes, I think this is a good idea, and let's make it a little broader. I'm not sure how to phrase that. But again, with some guidance that the PSE easement issue that is currently going around be the sort of first order of operations for the committee. That would be my suggestion.
My key question is, what is the added value? In general, we're all time short. Efficiency is very important, particularly right now, because there are many people who are unknowingly, very rapidly signing easements, signing away their property rights to PSE, which is a private, overseas-based company. It's Dutch-Canadian. That kind of urgency orients me towards total focus on this issue only as quickly as possible. So I don't see added value in bringing it under the umbrella of it. Yeah.
Okay, so we have another question.
Carrie Dondecker, and it's in response to what you raised, and I'm wondering, is this an advisory committee, or is this more a task force or something more action oriented? And maybe, I'm used to committees, but I'm also used to like special interest, one interest task forces, or whatever the term might be. So I'm just wondering if there's a way that we get to the same place, but also recognizing that this is a very time sensitive, specific issue that we're talking about tackling. Just an idea.
To me, the key question is around the issue of participatory democracy. And that to me is kind of really what we're talking about, like how we're going to do this should reflect democratic processes that involve an understanding of all the potential issues that come up. So I don't think there's any loss. The word advisory, did I come up with that, or was that because it was an interesting creation process that we did at the last meeting? But advisory to me means we do a good job at, and I think that this is actually crucial also for this body. This body needs validation on the island in terms of it being more representative, more engaged in a real way. I would like to see it not be like a ticking of the box. Oh, we came to this council, and whether it's King County or whoever, and so we've done our community consultation, because what's really happening on the ground, are people actually being talked to and discussed? So that's my goals. I've done this before. I actually developed legislation in Australia, working with on a pretty highly contentious issue. So I know how to do this, and it's about community engagement, and we can dabble with the wording, but that's what advisory means to me.
So I'll just talk a little bit about this. So the new laws for running nonprofit organizations in the state, we can have two kinds of committees: committees of the board or advisory committees. So the advisory committees, so talk about democratic process. So the committee will work on this, and they'll bring it to the board and say, here's what we want now, here's what we're recommending. And if the board says, yeah, let's bring it to the members, and the members, the community votes on it. And so that's how it will work.
And I'd like to add another thing. The processes that I'm used to, the democratic processes, are you actually have to prove who you spoke with and who you consulted with. You can't just say we did, because honestly, I see a lot of that. And it's not good for us. We have to move towards participatory democracy. It must occur. So this is dear to my heart. Maybe that's why Universe delivered this to my doorstep. My trees are under threat. Street frontage trees are under threat. I'm not sure at this point exactly all the parts of the issue, which is why I'm doing massive research and going directly to the people who are involved. For example, I don't go to the real estate acquisition team to get advice about how they put in the tree wire. I go to the operations people on the ground. I talk to them about the typical way that they put in wires, and I get good answers that are often contradictory to what other areas are saying. So that's it.
Okay, so it's time for a vote. Oh, Debbie, quick question, Debbie, go ahead.
Okay,
Unmute
it's not so
yourself.
much a question, it's just a comment. It seems like there's two issues. One is the property rights that you're talking about and cutting down your trees and stuff. And the other one is that storms and things make branches fall down and trees fall down, and it's a big, and PSC has to get a lot of people out here to kind of work on that. So, what would be the most advantageous to the population, while still considering, of course, the property rights of individuals?
Okay. My understanding at this point, Debbie, is that tree wire is a separate issue that perhaps does not, it's mutually exclusive to this movement of the poles. That's what I think at this point, but I'm working that out. So I don't think it's the loss of tree wire. I think it's more about finding out precisely things like the King County regulations that oversee the right-of-way. And I've got little diagrams and stuff, but I don't think now's the time for that. I think probably everybody's got enough information. Raise your hand if you don't think you've had enough. I can talk for a very long time.
No, that's okay. Thank you for your response.
Okay, now apparently I have to ask for, oh, you do it.
Yeah, this is a revised motion. The original motion was moved and seconded in January, but now we have a revised motion, so we'll need a second on this. If someone, and I'll read it one
I'll
more
second
time.
it then.
Thank you. I'll just read it one more time, and we really need to vote on this and keep moving. That V-MCC, the motion is that V-MCC create an advisory committee to learn more about the PSC tree wire project, the implications of the project for island property owners, and make recommendations for any appropriate action that the V-MCC should take. We've had a month to think about this and ask questions. It's time for a vote. Unless anyone wants to say, no, 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 if you want to, you can move to have more time for discussion if you wish, but I'd have to hear a motion and a second and a vote on that. I'm not, so let's vote. I have a poll prepared for the folks online. Let's see. Polls and quizzes. Okay. I'm going to launch it. All right, and the poll is generically worded for the motion. So those folks, yes, we take a vote in the room. All those in favor, members, please vote. If you know you're a member, you may vote. Any nays in the room here? Okay. And the poll online is pretty much finished here. 14 yes and 4 no. So could you add those numbers there too, please? Would you mind? 14 yes and 4 no. Yes, motion has carried. We are going to form this committee and get moving on it.
Point of order.
Yes.
Diane, could you just announce the final vote tally so the records can accurately reflect it?
28 yeas and 4 nays, and that will be in the minutes of the meeting. Okay. All right, very good. Democratic process at work.
Yeah, we're going to get really good at it.
Someday. Okay, next, Vashon Town Planning Committee update and questions. David Vogel, if you could just.
Okay, yes.
Okay, David, go.
Hello. We had a Vashon Town Plan Committee meeting on January 29th, and it was, well represented. We had a chance to look over what's being proposed by the county and how it relates to Vashon. And essentially, they've taken away the special district overlay, saying that it hasn't encouraged the building of affordable housing. But there were other things holding back the building of affordable housing as well, such as the inability to get water hookups through Water District 19 and lack of available property. So King County took it out and essentially put in can people hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. They said that it has to be 100% affordable housing in the town plan area, and there will be no transfer of development rights, which is what we had asked for through the community council. We talked about various things in the previous iterations of the town planning, and there had been a proposal before to allow housing that would be a certain percentage of affordable housing and a certain percentage of commercial housing, so that commercial developers might want to develop within the town area. the way it's presently set up by the county, the only organizations that would be able to develop affordable housing would be something like Vashon Household, which would depend on government funding. So the town plan committee was thinking perhaps we should rethink this position. Should we be keeping developers out of the town of Vashon to build affordable housing, which is a benefit for us, or should we be looking at it as perhaps there are developers who could come in and build a substantial amount of affordable housing as well as commercial housing? And so the town plan committee is thinking that we would meet again Monday, February 26th, to think is this something we want to revisit. Previously, the county had reached out to people in the community and had heard, no, we want just affordable housing. We don't want to be building commercial housing in the town of Vashon. But is that really what we want if we're not going to get anything? So we looked at height restrictions. 3 stories, duplex, fourplexes are going to be allowed in the R1s. The table had been from proposed ordinance changes from, I guess, in February of 23. This table had been proposed with some benefits for commercial developers, but right now there is no, there really could not be commercial development of affordable housing in the town of Vashon. So that was what the town plan meeting discussed. We also talked about Airbnbs. Is that something that we would want to keep out of the town area because of the limited resources there? That didn't get a lot of traction. Need for moderate income housing, that's definitely a need. And is that going to be created in the middle housing applying to the R1 zoning, which goes along the Vashon Highway? Any questions? Okay. Yes?
Did you resolve the issue with District 19 water shares for high density housing? And if so, what do you do with the people that were waitlisted to get on to District 19?
No, we have not resolved that issue with Water District 19, and that will remain a very thorny issue. Yeah. Yeah, I can't answer that question. But our next meeting will be Monday, February 26th at 7 o'clock. And people that would like to get invited, just let us know. Okay. Thank you,
Okay, any
Diane.
other- Yes, thank you very much, David.
Okay.
So just to mention that what they're proposing doesn't stop commercial development in the town core. It just doesn't give commercial developers any bonuses, like high density bonuses for putting in affordable housing. They can still build 100% market rate housing and minutes if they wish, but they're just not going to get any bonuses. Everybody needs water shares to do that. And yeah, and Water District 19 cannot hold aside water shares for affordable housing, unfortunately.
Just like to make one comment, David. for the committee. I've done quite a lot of investigation of this topic. I'd like to forward through actually to the committee the research that I've done, in particular the case study of Burlington, where Bernie Sanders lived and lives. And he saw the example of New York in particular, where big bonuses were given to developers who gave short-term benefits to and you're hopefully totally familiar with this. And so the crisis that's been developed, you know, there's a lot of worry and concern in our community that back pockets are being lined in areas that we're not aware of, and certain things occur, like maybe, well, I've personally had experiences as a landlord, which is reducing. There's a huge push that's reducing the amount of landlords who want to enter in the game. There's an exodus out of residential housing. So there's certain strategies in place that are having a very big negative effect on the housing supply. And so I'd like to strongly suggest you look at the Burlington example, because it results in long-term affordable housing that's still in place from the 60s and 70s, whereas a lot of the stuff that I was referring to that has nefarious activities behind it does not resolve it, the affordable housing issue, and taxpayers take it again.
Well, what we've found has worked on Vashon is the land trust model, where the land underlying the buildings is held in a community trust, and therefore it can't appreciate at a commercial rate. So that has maintained affordable housing on Vashon in several projects. So it's worked for us on a small scale, and you know, we might be using that again. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. A very important issue. I've written it down. Okay. Next item is community announcements. This just came in very recently. There is a proposal to reduce the speed limits and I'm going to show the map. Let's see. Screen, okay. There we go. Okay, between Southwest 127th Street and Southwest 153rd, a reduction from 50 miles per hour to 45 miles per hour. And further south, between Southwest 182nd Street and Cemetery Road, reduction from 40 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour. So I'm mentioning this because there is a 14-day comment period from February 26th to March 11th, so that the public can share their feedback about this proposal. And there will be postcards being mailed to businesses and households close to it. But there's also, if you read the Beachcomber, there's a place that you can go and get the information. There will also be information on our website to where you can go and share information about how you feel about this. So that's that. And that's where we need to get, if you have a comment about it, that's where you need to go, not so much this meeting. Okay. Okay. Any other community announcements that anyone would like to bring up or mention?
Just really quickly, I telegraphed this earlier. There's a lot that's going on with land use and the executive is proposing some broad changes to land use across the county and rural areas. So this is what Diane and I get lots of emails about, lots of emails. I'm thankful we have a committee now to look into the PSE issue. I will likely, just telegraphing what I'm going to do, once we have some feedback on that issue, I will likely be moving to sort of transition that into a land use committee, because there are enough issues of broader concern outside the town planning committee. I know the town planning committee has been great, but there are some broader issues outside the town that are going to be affected.
Yes, and I'll just add to that. Over the years that I've been involved here, people have said at times, we should have a land use committee again. It should be resurrected, because we did have, the community council in a prior iteration did have a land use committee and address some really key issues, and it's time to bring it back and address land use on the island, and to have a committee that can look into some of these things. And that's what, you know, the community council can be used for, is because otherwise things can happen and changes can be made, and if we don't have a group of people, to the community, to come together and think and talk about it, things can just get passed really fast without any or very little community input. So a land use committee is, but we need people to be on the land use committee. So if this is something that is of interest to you, then please put your hand up as far as being on the land use committee. And first, Kevin, you have your hand up.
Actually, I'm asking to speak, Diane.
Oh, and not about this particular topic, but you, okay.
It's related, actually. I wanted to suggest you give Jenny the opportunity to ask folks who might want to be on the committee that we just approved by that motion. Maybe the same request that you're making.
My question is, could you post a link as to what those land use actions are, like in the minutes or something? Got my interest.
Dan, you have a note there? Okay, we'll just follow up.
Okay, so first of all, let's go back to the PSE committee and a request for people to be on that committee. Jenny, could you give us your email, how to reach you?
Sure. Telephone 206 507 6289. Email Jenny Bell, Bell, Jenny, Jenny Bell 111 at protonmail.com. So instead of a G, it's a proton, center of the atom.
And I'll be updating the website with this new committee, and that information will be on the website as well. Thank you very much for mentioning that, Kevin. Okay, and so if anyone, and I'll also put information about a potential land use committee on the website, and so people will be able to, we don't have any interim chair, we don't have anybody to lead it, so nothing's going to happen until someone steps forward to do that. But if you are interested in participating, you can send an email, and I'll put an email on the website for people who are interested. Okay, what else? Open discussion. Anybody have anything they'd like to raise or discuss? Or yes, come on up.
I just have a comment. I really appreciate this meeting and this group and what we can accomplish. And I also appreciate that this meeting was not raising outside political issues. I think that that can shrink the group and turn people away. So I love the fact that it's Vashon focused. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, well, look at that, it's 9 o'clock. On that wonderful note, as usual, we try to start and end these meetings on time so that people can predict when they're going to be done. And our next meeting will be Thursday, March 21st, 6:30 p.m. We'll start with mingling with refreshments again, and would love to have people help bring some refreshments for that. It's lovely to see people get to do that. topics, discussion on emergency shelter for our unhoused neighbors, the comprehensive plan again. The Seattle Indian Health Board may make an appearance. Teresa Mosqueda will definitely be here, and we will probably have an update on PSC and land use by then. Okay, see you next month. Meeting adjourned.